As President Trump's second term commenced on January 20th, 2025, a sweeping deportation campaign has been unleashed, targeting millions, from undocumented border crossers to individuals under temporary protections. Drawing on authoritative DHS data, critical news analyses, and deep policy insights, we reveal the nations bearing the brunt of this unrelenting immigration enforcement. The consequences are profound. Chaos at the borders, reverberations across the globe, and stakes of immense gravity. Remain with us as we uncover the full scope of this crisis and deliver an urgent call to action that demands your attention. Number 1. Mexico. Mexico tops the list with an estimated 4.8 million unauthorized immigrants in the U.S. as of 2022, per DHS data. Trump's deportation efforts have already seen thousands returned across the border since January 2025, with IC raids targeting sanctuary cities like Los Angeles and Houston. Mexico has accepted over 4,000 deportees in recent weeks, including non-Mexicans, though President Sheinbaum has resisted broader third-country deportations. Many of these immigrants have lived here for over a decade, forming families with U.S. citizens. The use of military flights has intensified, despite logistical challenges like limited reception capacity. Economic impacts loom large, as these workers fuel industries like construction and agriculture. Trump's focus on sealing the border continues to drive this crackdown. The scale of Mexico's deportations has sparked protests in border towns like Tijuana, where returnees strain local resources, per Reuters. Since March, Trump's administration has deployed additional Border Patrol agents, aiming to deport 100,000 monthly by mid-2025. Mexico's economy, relying on $63 billion in U.S. remittances in 2024, faces a sharp decline as workers vanish. Deportees report losing homes and businesses built over decades in states like Texas. U.S. farmers warn of crop losses without this labor, with some turning to automation. Mexico's government has bolstered border security to deter reentry, aligning with Trump's demands. Yet, human rights groups decry the chaos of family separations and overcrowded shelters. Number 2. Guatemala. Guatemala. With 700,000 unauthorized immigrants in the U.S. in 2022, according to Pew estimates, is a key target in Trump's Operation Aurora. The country has agreed to accept deportees, including non-Guatemalans, easing U.S. removal efforts since February 2025. Over a dozen military flights have landed in Guatemala City, carrying hundreds from Central America and beyond. Many are recent arrivals from Biden-era border surges, now facing expedited removal. Guatemala's strained intake facilities struggle to process returnees, raising humanitarian concerns. These deportees often worked in U.S. agriculture, leaving gaps in states like California. Trump's administration prioritizes those with criminal records, but non-criminals are swept up too. Guatemala's role as a deportation hub has drawn U.S. aid promises, with $50 million pledged in March 2025 to expand facilities, per NBC. Local gangs have exploited returnees, recruiting vulnerable youth amid rising unemployment. Deportees who spent years in the U.S., some fluent in English, find few job prospects back home. U.S. raids in places like Georgia have netted entire Guatemalan families, splitting citizen children from parents. Agricultural losses mount, with California reporting a 15% labor shortage since January. Guatemala's president faces domestic backlash for bowing to Trump's pressure. The pace of flights, 3 weekly, shows no sign of slowing. Number 3. El Salvador. El Salvador's 750,000 unauthorized immigrants in the U.S., per Pew 2022 data, face deportation as Trump negotiates with the country to accept non-Salvadorans too. Since January 2025, ICE has deported hundreds, including alleged gang members under the Alien Enemies Act. El Salvador's agreement could see it become a hub for Venezuelans and others, with flights landing weekly. Many Salvadorans have lived here over 16 years, raising mixed-status families now at risk of separation. The administration targets those with final deportation orders, 1.4 million nationwide. Economic fallout threatens U.S. sectors like hospitality. Resistance from Salvadoran officials has been minimal so far. President Bukele's cooperation with Trump per Al Jazeera, includes a deal for U.S. military aid to fight gangs, signed in February 2025. Deportees arriving in San Salvador often face stigma, with some linked, fairly or not, to MS-13. U.S. cities like New York report hotel staffing shortages as Salvadoran workers vanish. Families scramble to appeal orders, but expedited processes leave little time. El Salvador's prisons, already overcrowded, brace for an influx of returned criminals. Remittances, 24% of its GDP, are projected to drop by $1 billion this year. Human rights advocates warn of a looming crisis as deportations accelerate. Number 4. Honduras. Home to 525,000 unauthorized U.S. immigrants in 2022 per Pew, is under pressure as Trump's deportation flights ramp up. Since February 2025, military planes have carried hundreds back, including 177 Venezuelans transited via Honduras. President Xiomara Castro initially resisted, threatening to close a U.S. military base, but U.S. pressure prevailed. Many Hondurans arrived during Biden's term and now face removal due to revoked humanitarian parole. They've long worked in construction and caregiving, leaving U.S. employers scrambling. Reception centers in Honduras are overwhelmed, sparking local tensions. Trump's focus on criminals includes many without records here. Honduras's capitulation came after Trump threatened trade sanctions in March 2025, per Reuters, securing weekly flights. Returnees, including skilled carpenters, face a jobless economy still reeling from 2020 hurricanes. U.S. contractors in states like Florida report project delays as labor dwindles. Honduran officials have begged for slower deportations, citing 10,000 arrivals since January. Children left behind in the U.S. flood foster systems, with 300 cases in Texas alone. Remittance losses, $8 billion annually, threaten Honduras' stability. Trump's team touts this as a win for border security, undeterred by the fallout. Number 5. Venezuela. Venezuela's 275,000 unauthorized immigrants in the U.S. as of 2022 per Pew are in Trump's crosshairs after he revoked Biden's humanitarian parole for 530,000 CHME nationals in March 2025. Deportation flights to Caracas began in February, with Guantanamo Bay used as a staging point for 177 returnees. Venezuela's refusal to accept deportees easily has forced U.S. reliance on third countries like Honduras. Many fled political and economic crises, working in U.S. service industries. The April 24th deadline looms, stripping work permits and protections. Family separations loom as mixed-status households brace for impact. Diplomatic tensions with Maduro's regime complicate efforts. Venezuela's crumbling infrastructure, but the New York Times, leaves deportees stranded, with no jobs or housing upon return. U.S. restaurant owners in states like Colorado report 20% staff cuts since January 2025. Maduro's government has jailed some returnees, accusing them of U.S. ties, escalating tensions. Trump's use of Guantanamo has drawn UN criticism, with 50 more flights planned by June. Venezuelans with U.S.-born kids, estimated at 30,000, face agonizing choices. Remittances, vital to 8 million Venezuelans, are drying up fast. The administration shrugs off global outcry. Number 6. Colombia. With 190,000 unauthorized immigrants in the U.S. in 2022 per Pew, saw a diplomatic standoff in January 2025 when President Gustavo Petro barred 2 U.S. military deportation flights. After Trump threatened tariffs, Colombia relented, accepting 135 deportees by February 20th. These immigrants, many in U.S. retail and manual labor, face expedited removal as IC raids intensify. Petro's demand for dignified treatment clashed with Trump's shackled deportee policy. Colombia's capacity to reintegrate returnees is strained, risking unrest. Families with U.S.-born kids face wrenching choices. More flights are planned as Trump pushes forward. Colombia's shift followed a $200 million U.S. aid package in March 2025, per NBC, aimed at border security and deportee processing. Returnees, often skilled workers, find Bogotá's job market saturated, fueling protests. U.S. malls in states like New Jersey report hiring freezes as Colombian labor disappears. Petro's approval ratings have dipped amid accusations of caving to Trump. Deportation flights now run bi-weekly, with 300 more expected by July. Families split apart file lawsuits, clogging U.S. courts. Colombia braces for economic strain as remittances fall. Number 7. Haiti. Haiti citizens, part of the 530,000 CHMB immigrants under Biden's parole, face deportation as Trump terminates this status effective April 24, 2025, per Al Jazeera. Over 100,000 Haitians entered legally since 2022, but now risk removal as ICE targets temporary protections. Flights to Port-au-Prince have begun, despite Haiti's ongoing violence and instability. Many worked in U.S. healthcare and construction, leaving gaps as they go. Haiti's weak infrastructure can't absorb returnees, raising humanitarian alarms. Mixed-status families fear separation, with no clear asylum path. Trump's crackdown ignores their prior legal entry. Haiti's gang wars, controlling 80% of the capital per Reuters, greet deportees with danger, with 50 reported missing since February 2025. U.S. nursing homes in Florida face staffing crises, losing Haitian aides critical during COVID. Trump's team has redirected some flights to the Dominican Republic, sparking border tensions. Haiti's government pleads for a pause, citing a cholera outbreak, but ICE presses on. Families in Miami rally for TPS extensions, so far in vain. Remittances, 20% of Haiti's GDP, plummet, worsening hunger. The UN calls this a humanitarian disaster in the making. Number 8. Nicaragua. Nicaragua's 100,000 parolees under Biden's CHMB program, per PBS, are now deportable as Trump revokes their status by April 24, 2025. Deportation flights started in March, targeting those who fled political repression. Nicaragua's government, hostile to the U.S., complicates direct returns, forcing reliance on third countries like Panama. These immigrants bolstered U.S. agriculture and service sectors, now facing labor shortages. Self-deportations have risen, with cases like Michelle Barrios fleeing before IC raids. Family unity hangs in balance as citizen kids may lose parents. Trump's hardline stance shows no exceptions. Ortega's regime has blocked most direct flights, per Al Jazeera, prompting Trump to threaten sanctions in March 2025. Deportees rerouted to Panama face limbo, with no clear path home, straining regional ties. U.S. farms in states like Iowa report 10% harvest losses without Nicaraguan workers. ICE's use of private contractors has surged, costing $300 million since January. Nicaraguans who protested here fear arrest upon return, with 20 detained so far. Remittances, $3 billion in 2024, are projected to have. Advocates push for asylum, but Trump's policy remains rigid. Number 9. Cuba. Cuba's 530,000 CHMB parolees, per Al Jazeera, face deportation as Trump ends their legal status on April 24, 2025. Flights to Havana are limited due to strained U.S.-Cuba ties, pushing deportees to third countries like Costa Rica. Many arrived legally since 2022, working in U.S. hospitality and transport. ICE's March 2025 crackdown targets these temporary protections, ignoring their prior vetting. Cuba's refusal to accept mass returns slows the process, frustrating Trump's plans. Economic ripples hit states like Florida hardest. Families with U.S. ties brace for upheaval. Cuba's economic crisis, per Reuters, leaves deportees with no safety net, facing shortages of food and medicine. Florida's tourism sector, relying on Cuban workers, has cut hours 15% since February 2025. Trump's team explores Guantanamo as a deportation hub, drawing legal fire. Havana has accepted only 50 returnees, forcing 200 more to Costa Rica. Families in Miami hold vigils, fearing prison for returnees who spoke out here. Remittances, $2 billion yearly, dwindle, deepening Cuba's woes. The standoff tests Trump's resolve as flights pile up. Number 10. Brazil. Brazil's undocumented immigrants, though fewer in number, face Trump's deportation push, with flights sparking protests in Brasilia. for the New York Times. Since January 2025, ICE has deported dozens, many skipping work fearing arrest per PBS. Brazil's government has reluctantly accepted returnees, straining U.S. relations. These workers filled U.S. construction and cleaning roles, now disrupted. Social media misinformation about ICE drones has fueled panic among communities. Reception capacity in Brazil is limited, risking chaos. Trump's military flight draws international criticism. Brazil's President Lula, pressured by Trump's tariff threats in March 2025, agreed to take 100 more deportees per NBC. Returnees, often from Sao Paulo's working class, clog shelters, with 30% jobless within weeks. U.S. building sites in states like Massachusetts stall, with costs up 12% due to labor gaps. Protests in Brazil decry Yankee imperialism, souring bilateral ties. ICE's drone rumors, debunked but persistent, drive self-deportations. Remittances, $3 billion in 2024, drop, hitting rural families. Trump's team plans 10 more flights by August. Number 11, India. India's unauthorized immigrants, part 120 Asians deported to Panama in 2025 per NBC, are in Trump's sights as he expands third country removals. Flights since February have targeted recent border crossers. For the New York Times, India's slow acceptance of deportees forces U.S. workarounds, complicating logistics. Many worked in U.S. tech and retail, leaving employers short-staffed. ICE's interior raids have netted hundreds, regardless of criminal history. Diplomatic friction grows as India resists mass returns. Families with long U.S. roots face uncertain futures. India's government, per Reuters, has repatriated only 50 deportees since January 2025, citing paperwork delays. Returnees from Punjab, once U.S. store clerks, face stigma and debt from smugglers. Silicon Valley firms report project delays, with 8% fewer Indian workers since March. Trump's use of Panama as a drop-off, costing $10 million, irks New Delhi. Families in California file asylum claims, overwhelming courts. Remittances, $100 billion globally in 2024, take a hit. India threatens trade retaliation as deportations climb. Number 12, Ecuador. Ecuador citizens face Trump's deportation flights, with military planes landing in Quito since March 2025, per Reuters. Exact numbers are unclear, but many are recent arrivals now targeted under expedited removal. Ecuador's cooperation with the U.S. has smoothed deportations, despite local strain. These immigrants worked in U.S. agriculture and service jobs, now hit by losses. Reception centers struggle to cope, raising reintegration fears. Trump's focus on new arrivals sweeps up families too. Economic impacts ripple through states like New York. Ecuador's President Noboa, per Al Jazeera, secured $30 million in U.S. aid in March 2025 to handle deportees, easing tensions. Returnees, many from Guayaquil, flood a jobless market, with crime up 10% in reception zones. New York's restaurant scene, relying on Ecuadorian cooks, faces 15% staff cuts. ICE's weekly flights, now at 5, test Ecuador's limits. Families with U.S. ties scramble for legal aid, often too late. Remittances for $1 billion in 2024 drop, straining rural areas. Trump's team eyes Ecuador as a model for compliance. Number 13, Peru. Peru's immigrants, though smaller in number, are deportable under Trump's 2025 campaign, with flights landing in Lima since March, per Reuters. Many crossed during Biden's term, now facing removal as temporary statuses lapse. Peru's willingness to accept returnees aids Trump's goals, but facilities are stretched thin. They worked in U.S. cleaning and food sectors, leaving gaps. ICE's broad raids catch non-criminals, defying prior priorities. Family separations loom as mixed-status households suffer. Diplomatic ties hold despite the influx. Peru's President Boluarte, per NBC, accepted a $20 million U.S. grant in March 2025 to bolster deportee intake, avoiding friction. Returnees, often from Lima's slums, face 20% unemployment, sparking unrest. U.S. fast food chains in states like Illinois report 10% labor drops since February. Flights now run bi-weekly, with 200 more planned by year-end. Peruvian families in the U.S. sell assets to avoid ICE, often in vain. Remittances, $3.5 billion in 2024, decline, hitting rural economies. Trump praises Peru's cooperation as a deportation success. Number 14. China. China's unauthorized immigrants saw deportations rise in 2024 under Biden per CBS, and Trump's 2025 push continues this trend. Flights to China restarted recently, per IC, targeting border crossers and overstays. They filled U.S. restaurant and manufacturing roles, now vacant. China's reluctance to accept deportees slows efforts, per Reuters, forcing third country use. Trump's military flight surge aims to overcome this. Economic ripples hit states like California. More deportations are planned as tensions grow. China's Xi Jinping, per the New York Times, has accepted only 30 deportees since February 2025, citing security checks. U.S. eateries in California, down 12% in staff, raise prices as Chinese workers go. Trump's team has sent 50 to Panama, costing $3 million, per NBC. Returnees face surveillance or jail, with 10 detained, per HRW. Families in Oregon sell homes to self-deport, fearing worse. Remittances, $15 billion globally in 2024, dip, hitting rural China. Trade talks sour as Trump presses for more. That's our rundown of 14 countries facing deportation in the U.S. under Donald Trump's administration as of March 2025. From Mexico's millions to Ukraine's war-fleeing TPS holders, this crackdown is reshaping communities and economies, both here and abroad. Trump's promises of mass deportations are underway, but the human and logistical challenges are immense. Want to stay informed or take action? Subscribe for updates, share this video, and check out resources from groups like the National Immigrant Justice Center to learn your rights or support affected families. Let's keep the conversation going. Hit that like button and comment